The New York Times says Israel's snake attack was an act of inexcusable and short sighted aggression. The Los Angeles Times says this is nothing less than an act of state sponsored terrorism. Oh, you thought those quotes were brand new quotes about the events of last night? Nope, fooled you. Those are actually quotes from the morning of Monday, the 8th of June, 1981. And what inexcusable aggressive terrorist act were they moaning about on that day? It was when the Israelis blew up Saddam's nuclear reactor, which the whole civilized world now agrees was the absolutely correct thing to do. And do you think the editorial boards of the New York Times and the LA Times will be chastened by that memory, that they will stay the hand of reflexive Israel bashing and take a more measured view of the current situation? Nah, of course you don't, because you've seen this concert before and you know. They always play the greatest hits. It is Friday the 13th of June, so put on your hockey mask and grab your trusty chainsaw, because it's time for Curmudgeon's Corner. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where did I expect to be getting up this morning and searching YouTube for a Hava Nagila thrash metal version? I did not. But that's just the sort of joie de vivre that accompanies being your humble correspondent. Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to Curmudgeon's Corner. Let's talk about fucking around and finding out. The Iranians just fucked around and found out, as I'm sure you have heard by now. And as I have been flipping around to various execrable fake news sludge factories this morning, you know what word I keep hearing? I keep hearing the word unprecedented. Because I seriously think the people who currently run the news business actually believe history began in like 2004. Hey, idiots. This event is a lot of things, but unprecedented is not one of them. Not only does this event have a direct antecedent, but it represents the application of the very self-same doctrine that Israel first established with the destruction of that Iraqi reactor 44 years ago. You can say a lot of things about the Israelis, but you cannot say they don't consistently apply their strategic doctrines. The doctrine even has a name. It's called the Begin Doctrine. It's got its own Wikipedia article and everything, which tells you a little something about the level of research that the presenters on your favorite fake news channel actually engage in, but the host digresses. And the Begin Doctrine is simple, elegant, and uncomplicated. It says, in so many words, you cannot have nukes if you live in this neighborhood. And if you do live in this neighborhood and try to have nukes, we will solve that problem with the judicious application of high explosives. And really, in my judgment at least, if there's any big difference between this operation and the 1981 operation, it's that this one is far more justified. In fact, it's still a matter of some controversy in academic circles whether Saddam could have used his nuclear reactor to enrich weapons-grade plutonium even if he had wanted to. The Frenchman who built the thing says it's laughable to even suggest that. It was a 41-megawatt civil nuclear reactor of the same type they were building all over Europe at that time. But remember, when France agrees to go in there and build them a reactor and staff it with French personnel, Saddam Hussein is not even a thing yet. They build the reactor in 76. He doesn't seize power until 79, but then he does seize power, and he winds up being quite the madman. He shoots or hangs anybody he perceives as even a potential threat, and he's not even finished with that work when all of a sudden there is an Islamic revolution right next door in Iran. They swap out the Shah for the Ayatollah. And Saddam then gets the same idea that many previous petty tyrants have had who think they are on shaky political ground. He says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start me a war and use it to consolidate my hold on power. And what's the other reason he starts that war with Iran? Well, to curry favor with the West, obviously, to get a bunch of money and weapons rolling in, to get visits from fancy important people like former and future Defense Secretary Don Rumsfeld. Because bear in mind, from our vantage point over here in the West, Saddam looks like the guy we obviously want to support here. He's a secular dictator fighting against the crazy Islamic radicals who held our embassy staff hostage for 444 days. I mean, the math doesn't get much simpler than that. You betcha, sir! We'd be real glad to send you 600,000 Stinger missiles. Now you get out there and give those bastards hell, by golly. Meanwhile, the Israelis are sitting back taking this all in, and they're saying, you know, We already weren't that crazy about this nuclear reactor idea back in '76 with the previous Iraqi regime. We actually had a bit of a diplomatic spat over it with the French, over them agreeing to build and maintain the damn thing. Our relations with them are still frosty because of it. But this new regime, with this Saddam fellow, we are 100% not okay with this dude having any form of nuclear anything. Long story short, you need to take that reactor offline or we're going to blow it up. And when they issued that threat, they still weren't yet thinking of such an attack being the potential basis for an overarching national strategic doctrine that would extend well into the future and apply to all subsequent governments. Just like we have the Monroe Doctrine and the Truman Doctrine, they aren't laws in the literal sense, but they represent the permanent strategic posture of the United States. And so the Israelis ultimately decided that yes, we are going to conduct this operation and destroy this reactor, and concomitant with that action, we are going to announce that it is the position of the Israeli state now and henceforth that nobody in this neighborhood can have nuclear anything. And it's not difficult to see why they felt themselves impelled to assume that posture. But you know who really didn't like any of this? The U.S. diplomatic establishment and their water boys in the mainstream corporate news media. They said, "What the hell are you guys doing, Israel? You can't attack a guy that we're supporting. He is waging a war against our Iranian enemies, and we're giving him money and weapons with which to wage it. So it's not a very good look for us when you guys go in there and blow up this silly little 41-megawatt civil nuclear reactor." Meanwhile, Reagan's only been in office for as long as Trump has right now, and he has told the Israelis through unofficial back channels that, "Oh, you guys know how it is. I'm going to have to raise a stink about this in public, but I totally understand why you're doing the thing, so go ahead and do the thing. You know the Gipper's got your back, baby." Now fast forward to the present day, and the Israeli action of yesterday, or last night, or whatever it was, this was a response to a series of very direct provocations by the Iranian regime, in which they said to the whole world, "We are not going to stop enriching uranium. We are going to enrich a whole hell of a lot more uranium. We're going to build a whole hell of a lot more enrichment sites. We're not even pretending any longer that this is about a peaceful nuclear power project. We want to enrich enough uranium to build a nuclear warhead that we can then immediately launch at your country and wipe your bitch ass off the map." And since the threat was more direct and more severe, the response was also more direct and more severe. All they did back in '81 was to blow up the reactor and go home. And that was a great operation if you're a fan of fighter planes, by the way. I've heard it said that it was the closest real-world analog to the mission from Top Gun Maverick, but I say fuck that. It's the closest real-world analog to the mission from Iron Eagle. I am an Iron Eagle guy, can't help it. Now, that was actually a pretty big controversy back when I was 13. You were either a Top Gun guy or an Iron Eagle guy. You couldn't like both movies equally. You had to love one and denigrate the other. It was really the closest thing we had to the Beatles versus the Stones. And also, I would be remiss in not mentioning that one of the pilots in the 1981 operation was Colonel Ilan Ramon, who later perished in the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster after having become the first Israeli in space.
We're Jews out in space. We're zooming along, protecting the Hebrew race. We're Jews out in space. If trouble appears, we'll put it right back in its place. When Goyim attack us, we'll give them a smack, we'll slap them right back in the face.
I am really, really sorry, but I just couldn't help myself. But this time, the Israelis fucked around even less and the Iranians found out even more. They didn't just blow up every enrichment site all to smithereens, they also decapitated the military leadership and the scientific leadership so as to degrade the other side's ability to effectively counterattack, which is pretty freaking smart. The Israelis are actually quite good at all this stuff, and if you threaten to do them harm, if you threaten to eradicate them from the earth in a fiery hellstorm of nuclear destruction, if those words come out of your mouth, irrespective of what your job title is and how physically secure you think you are, they will make you dead. Graveyard dead, in the words of that heroic Florida sheriff in that video that's currently making the rounds, which was probably, I think, yesterday's number 2 top video after the one where Tampon Tim says he doesn't know what a woman is. You'd think a guy named after a tampon would be well positioned to speak authoritatively on such matters, but I guess they don't make governors like they used to. I'm done, that's all I got. See you Sunday, Flash Radius, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Get off my lawn now.